Steelers have been busy at pro days. It's not unusual, except that they're putting a lot of emphasis on the quarterbacks in this upcoming draft, even though they signed Mitch Trubisky. So, Chris Adamski, I'm going to start with you. They have Trubisky, they have Rudolph, they have Haskins. They seem to be interested in drafting a quarterback at number 20. Should they? And if so, who should it be?
It would be malpractice if they weren't doing their homework at this point, right? I don't think even in their minds, they think 5 years from now, Mitchell Trubisky is going to be the starting quarterback. They know they need a quarterback of the future. They have their bridge quarterback now. Even if they look at next year's draft class or think ahead to next year or think we'll roll the dice with Trubisky for 1 year, you have to do your homework and you have to be ready. You can't be caught with your pants down. If something happens crazy, like when Aaron Rodgers fell to the 24th pick, whatever it might be, they have to do their homework on all these guys because at some point here soon, if not this year, next year, and at the very latest, probably the year after, unless somehow Trubisky shows himself to be a decade-long starter, which I'm not buying until I see it. I don't think anybody is. You have to get your starting quarterback of the future. So this is Mike Tomlin has dinner with the safeties and linebackers and guards during draft time. So the fact he's doing that, they are following the quarterbacks around. I don't think there's any reason to make it a smoke screen by any. I've heard that before. I guess in theory, there's a couple teams that wouldn't trade above you maybe or something. I don't think that's going to happen. But if one of these guys they fall in love with, or a couple of them they fall in love with, and they start to fall down into the teens, and you can in striking range to trade up to get those guys, or one of them's there at 20, certainly you take them then. They have to be ready and they have to know these guys in and out. This is your quarterback. This isn't a safety or a linebacker. You have to know these individuals you're taking to be the face of your franchise for a decade or more.
Jason?
Yeah, I completely agree with Buzz on this one. I mean, you have to be able to do the homework. You have to know how the draft is going to fall. If Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis or whomever falls to them, they have to be prepared and have a grade and have a plan sketched out. I like the Mitch Trubisky signing, but I also like the Mitch Trubisky signing in that it's only guaranteed in the signing bonus. So if you have to pivot, if for some reason, I mean, I'm not saying like they're going to just, cast off Mitch Trubisky without any chance because they have a chance to draft Kenny Pickett. I'm not saying that, but you've got some flexibility baked in. And if the draft falls a certain way, then great, they've prepared for it. I don't take this as they're automatically drafting somebody because they're at their pro day. I mean, this is a big decision. I think Kevin Colbert talked about this. Maybe it was today at the owners' meetings or certainly recently, saying we haven't had to do this in a while. I don't think it's a bad thing, even if it's for next year, to just get out and prepare and see things. The draft is such a crapshoot. We keep using those words, but, I'm glad to see they're preparing for it.
I don't want them to draft a quarterback this year because I think you're not going to get enough return on investment. Willis obviously has huge talent, but the potential risk that he never pans out is still great. Pickett, high floor, low ceiling. I think that's Derek Carr, and look at where he now stands in the AFC West given the arms race in that division. I don't love this year's crop. I would love to see this team try to fortify in other ways. Mitch Trubisky's probably not going to be good enough to get you a winning season, at least that's my opinion. And then maybe you have a chance at what looks like on paper next year in a stronger quarterback class to draft your guy of the future. But having said all that, anybody that scouts the draft for a living and anybody that's a GM will tell you if you really think there's a quarterback that you have a high enough grade on, regardless of what the outside noise says about this year's class, you've got to take them. Then look at the landscape, guys, in the AFC. AFC East. All four teams a first-round pick at quarterback that they took in their draft class. So it's not like a guy like Trubisky who's coming over as a retread. The Browns add Deshaun Watson, two other first-rounders in the AFC North. Yes, the Titans added Tannehill, but he's gotten them to AFC title games before, an AFC title game. There's three first-round guys in the AFC West, one of them coming in. Well, no, Russell Wilson's a third-rounder, but you get my point, franchise-level guys. What is that? 11 of 14 teams or 11 of 16 teams in the conference have studs at the position. You can't get by with Trubisky very long. So if they're sitting there going, we love Malik Willis and he's there at 20, they're going to have to do it. I just don't have faith that it'll actually work out.
Yeah, you didn't mention Trevor Lawrence, another guy who's a stud,
right.
And they build around there in Jacksonville. At least they're hoping to. All right, so based on what Chris said and all those teams, Chris Adamski, right now, the odds are not in the Steelers' favor. In fact, if you look at odds all around, you'll see them fourth worst in the AFC. Would it be a bad thing for them to have a down year and miss the playoffs?
That's always the you don't want to be in the middle, right? That's what they always say. The Steelers aren't going to do that on purpose. There's at some point, right? No matter how much credit you give them the organization for being this good, or at least this not bad for this long now, you're going on pretty much 30 years with only 3 losing seasons and none here in 18, 19 years. At some point, it's going to happen, and you're right. At some point, bottoming out. Now, you don't have to do that. They've proven that. They're going to try. Like I go back to, I don't want to get into this whole thing, but this last year, if you're a fan, I don't know why fans root for tanking. I mean, they had a bunch of memories this past season, beating Baltimore, going to a playoff game, winning these games, coming back and winning the games they won. Ben's last, all those games were made that much better because they were in the playoff race, and that's kind of what sports are all about to me. That's a whole other topic to talk about. But yeah, hey, the AFC is a meat grinder right now, right? I don't know how the Steelers can kind of make themselves separate themselves from these other teams, or even join that you have 2 or 3 or 4 elite teams at the top, and then you have 8 or 9 that are going to be hard to crack as it is. So you're right. In the long term, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if they have one bad year and get some high draft picks because of it.
Jason.
Tanking? Who has to watch a team that's ever tanking? Nobody here watches a team that doesn't win very much. Come on. Oh, man. Here we are talking about it's so different from my day job. Anyway, did the Steelers not spend $85 million on free agents? Like, why in the world are we talking about them potentially not winning? I mean, I guess it can go poorly for them, but that certainly doesn't seem like what they want to do. It seems like they're, come hell or high water, they want to get, 9 wins, whether that matters or not. I don't think it does, but I mean, I just don't see them like going splat to the tune of like 4 or 5 wins and picking really high in the draft. I just don't think that's the business model they're operating under. And I think there's enough talent. There's certainly enough talent on defense to sort of prop them up. I don't see this as even close to a tanking situation.
Well, I wasn't implying tanking, Chris Mueller. I was just saying, if they end up missing the playoffs, there could be worse things.
Well, first of all, to the other Chris, to Buzz, memories, schmemories. Who cares about last season? This is the chant for 2022. Get ready. Say it with me, boys. 5 and 12. 5 and 12. 5 and 12. It's all right. We all have watched 20 years, basically, of uninterrupted competition. I do think it matters, by the way, to Mike Tomlin that he doesn't have a losing season. I think he takes pride in that. I think especially after 2019 and the way they battled the 8-8, he takes pride in that. If you go 5 and 12, though, chances are you're near the top of the draft. And with how many teams might still be bad despite having picked that franchise guy, say last year, like the Jets and the Jags still might not figure it out, you might be looking at teams that are picking right ahead of you who don't need a quarterback. If that means you have an inside track on the Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud or whoever else might rocket up the board sweepstakes, I don't know why anybody here wouldn't sign up for that if it meant 10, 15, even close to 20 years of what you just experienced.
We got to go to a break on that note. When we come back, I'll ask these guys what they thought of the Tyreek Hill trade. Who won that? Was it Kansas City? Was it Miami? That's next right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown.